Hey guys, what's going on? Shaw here, and today I wanted to talk about Dragonflight Beta. For those of you who may not know, Dragonflight Beta actually came out this last Thursday. Preceding this, Alpha was available to a handful of players and content creators who have been pretty much just littering the creative space with footage of gameplay, dragon riding, quests, talent trees, builds, all that fun stuff. But now that Beta is out, more and more players are gaining access to this yet to be released content, which is expected to be released in, December or November. So today I want to talk about my experience after the first few days of playing. I haven't done a video like this in a while where I kind of just talk over some gameplay footage about kind of my experience thus far in the beta, or in gameplay in general. So if you guys enjoy this content, please let me know by leaving a like down below and hitting that sub button if you'd like to see more content like this. But let's get into it. All right, I guess I'm going to really start off by just getting to the Dragon Isles and what like the opening quest chain was like for me. I've done it now 3 times. The first time through, and actually the times after that, were also fairly rewarding. The opening quest chain is actually really fast paced. So you're going to be either in Orgrimmar Stormwind, kind of going around recruiting, learning about the Dragon Isles, and kind of getting set up very, very early. I found this is like kind of the best time to set up your talents, though once pre-patch hits on live servers, this is when we're actually going to be having access to that talent tree. So it might not be as big of a deal once Dragonflight actually comes out, but on beta, like, you kind of have to wait around for the Zeppelin or the boat to arrive, whether you're Alliance or Horde. And when this is the case, you kind of just have to, like, fiddle your thumbs. I swear to God, I'm not going to have the footage of it, but I seriously felt like I waited for 10 minutes for the Borealis boat to arrive to take me to the Dragon Isles, where the Horde just, you, like, kind of walk on the Zeppelin and you go off. So Horde are probably going to be able to level faster because of this. But once you get to the zone, it just feels so amazing. Whether you're on the Zeppelin or on the boat, depending on your faction, you're going to get this really cool wide shot of like this opening to the Dragon Isles. And the zone just looks crisp, clean. It's the home for dragons. If you've been watching alpha content or any other beta content, you have probably seen some of the shots. But man, do these zones just feel good. The general design, especially when it comes to like artwork and layout, feels very much like Cataclysm Warlords-y, kind of had a love child, and this is Dragonflight. And it's just fun to start off and just get into killing dragons almost immediately. So it's the good old kill dragons for EXP farm, a classic staple of any MMO game. I'm not personally much of a questing person. If you've watched me on stream so far, I kind of just try to blast through the quests as quick as possible, kill 6 of these, loot 4 of those, whatever it might be. I just kind of go through, but I will say that the quests feel great in general design. It's your standard kill, loot, talk to this person, escort quests, but the quests are fast paced, and it's going to start you off with like rewarding 200 plus item level loot. So it's going to be great for new players, boosted characters, and all that fun stuff. So if you're looking to like main swap, you're going to be able to get pretty good loot fairly quickly. Now, of course, if you are a main coming out of like mythic raiding, you're pretty much just going to be able to keep this loot until the standard like 65, 66 is when you're going to start replacing some of this gear. What I also love so far is that you get dragon riding just super early, which is honestly just great for questing, because you're able to actually quickly travel around. Now, it's not obviously the standard flying. I'm not going to go over how great it feels and how game-changing it is, because I've played Minecraft. I know how an Elytra works. It's pretty much the same thing, except now you get it before having to like wait for a second or third patch into the expansion. And it's very dynamic. It makes the travel a lot more interesting. I think a lot of content creators have already talked about this in previous videos, especially coming out of alpha, is that just all in all, it's really fun to finish a quest and then be able to jump off the side of a mountain and soar at like 900% movement speed to the next area where you're questing. Even when you're kind of just jumping in between quest givers, you can kind of like get on your dragon, hop up a little bit, and soar really, really fast. And it just feels good. It feels new. It's very dynamic. It makes all of the gameplay very, very like interesting. Now, I'm not really a quest outdoors person. I like to just stick to my dungeons. So this is going to be my really awkward transition into the dungeons that I've tested thus far. Now, most of the testing that I've done has been at like early levels, so between 60 and 65. And I was playing with a handful of friends who also had access to beta. And if you're playing at like 60, 61, or people are testing out characters, you're typically going to be stuck to that very first dungeon, which is Uldaman, Legacy of Tyr. Now, this dungeon is really, it's nothing crazy. Like, some of the bosses are new and they're well designed, and I can see the concepts, especially when it comes to Mythic Plus and how actually these mechanics are going to intertwine with each other within the boss encounter. But of course, it's like a normal dungeon. We're kind of, at least my tank was Giga geared, so we're just kind of steamrolling these dungeons. But the dungeon is kind of like a nice little throwback. It's a throwback to an old dungeon. You can kind of see how they're kind of trying to rework it into a possible Mythic Plus experience, which is of course great for someone like me and people who are interested in Mythic Plus. It is 5 bosses, but the trash is like, you can really get some big pulls. There's a lot of like nice little LOS spots that you can stack things up very, very nicely. So I'm actually really excited for Uldaman Legacy here. Nothing really stood out. There's nothing like super exciting. Some of the bosses have like 2, 3, 4 mechanics, but the way that they're going to work, at least once, scaling starts to come into play, it's going to be really fun. I'm a big fan. The next dungeon that you unlock at level 61, so pretty early actually on, is Ruby Life Pools. And this is just your standard, very quick paced 3-boss dungeon. It is an objective based dungeon, so you have to actually rescue 4 like egg pool things from being attacked by the primalists, which is kind of like seems like the first kind of bad boy setup for the expansion, which has already been, I think, confirmed in a few different interviews. But you're going to run around, protect some eggs, and then you're going to go, it's basically a boss rush. So you're going to start off by like mass pulling trash at the start. You do boss, mass pull trash to protect these eggs, and you go boss. Very quick. Dungeons like this are always really fun. Things like Maw of Souls comes to mind, is just a very short, fast pace, just little boss rush. And those are kind of like the best designed dungeons because, again, you go in, you get out really, really quickly. So we're going to have to see if this actually makes it into the first Mythic Plus pool. But again, because it was like normal, there's points, if you had the right people in your group, is you would just like, you would nuke these bosses more often than not before mechanics actually happen. But it's really cool to kind of see how some of these mechanics are going to work. Like in the first boss of Ruby Life Pools, there's this like push-pull mechanic based off of like a debuff that's put on one of your players. It's like add rushes with whelps coming in to try to protect the boss. I don't remember her name. The last boss also has this really cool dynamic platform where there's a dragon flying around, breathing fire down, and like winds going and gusting from side to side. It's a pretty fun fight for what it's worth. And last but not least, we have like the Nakud offensive, however you say that. So the Nakud offensive. This is probably one of the more controversial dungeons, at least in my opinion, because it's a dungeon that you actually have to dragonfly in, or dragon ride, whatever you want to call it, which is really, really fun. But it kind of makes it for like this clunky, kind of broken instance design where you feel like you're spending more time flying around, which doesn't feel great. I'm trying to like picture it in Mythic Plus up against a timer, and there'll be like a little bit of optimizing, like the way you take routes to hit as many tornadoes, and the fastest way from point A to point B is a straight line, as everyone knows. So like trying to figure out how to optimize like getting uphill and then downhill through the different bosses is going to be a little unique. The trash feels really good though in the dungeon. Again, it's normal, so it's hard to tell without, proper scaling and, our tier sets that we're going to get eventually, and obviously like an infinite scaling modifier. But regardless, the dungeon's really fun. Having like this very open world, open concept map and instance is incredible. But again, we're going to have to see at endgame. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. We'll get there. Last but not least, I do want to talk about the few classes that I've tried, because a lot of you have been coming into my stream asking me what the best tank is looking like, or what's my favorite class to play in. I can't give an answer yet because I haven't tested everything, and I kind of want to see what things feel like at endgame. We need to see what tier sets see like. Like, there's a lot of things, at least for me, that you have to take into account before you make those kind of calls. But I have tested the Druid, Monk, and Warrior. The Druid is level 65, my Brewmaster Monk is 63, and then my Warrior is level 62. I have done at least 3 or more dungeons, and I have done all the dungeons on all of these tanks so far, and they all feel pretty good. There is a problem with Druid and Monk on the PTR, or on beta I should say, right now, where my talents keep getting like reset, and then I'm not allowed to choose new talents, so I'm kind of just waiting for that bug to get fixed. So as I've ran into these issues on these different characters, I've been moving on to the next tank, trying to test out as many as possible. But I do want to get to like at least 65 on all my characters before I actually make a judgment call on what's going to be the best tank to play or my favorite tank to play. So the Druid, we'll start with the Druid. The Druid, if you like Bear, if you've liked the Bear playstyle, nothing really interesting is changing. Now, we are getting a Moonfire build, which is very fun, but again, I'm on the side of the boat that is saying it's not going to be that practical probably in high-end content, because the way you play Moonfire build and like the way you build out the tree just doesn't make sense, and you're missing out on like damage mitigation, which is arguably way more important. Look at Prot Warrior, for example. They don't really heal all that much, but they mitigate so much damage. But good news for Druid is that supposedly there's a rework coming. At the time of recording this video, that hasn't been released yet. We're still kind of waiting, so I don't want to make any judgment calls on the Druid yet. Is it fun? Sure. If you like Bear, nothing really is crazy outside of you're applying a couple more Moonfires than you used to. Next, we have the Monk. Now, the Monk feels great. There's a lot of things that are changing. Like, for example, we're losing out on like the way that Kyrian weapons of order kind of worked with a lot of the conduits, as well as the different soulbinds that we had access to. Monk is also gaining a few things like Rising Sun Kick, for example, and gaining that ability, as well as having the option to play Boneless Brew and Weapons of Order in its like kind of raw, untouched state, feel really weird, because now we have a ton of buttons and it feels like too much. Like your rotation feels very disjointed. It doesn't match up, but like things like Rising Sun Kick as of right now are actually nuking things. So it's like if you want good single target damage, you have to take Rising Sun Kick, but it like feels clunky to hit because the way like it's a 9-second cooldown, and like the way your rotation works on live currently is very fluid. You kind of have like this like Keg Breath, Keg, Blackout, Tiger Palm, Rushing Jade Wind, Reap, and then you go into a Keg Smash and you kind of repeat that same rotation. But when you start to add like Rising Sun Kick, you start to miss out on reapping your Rushing Jade Wind, and then like all of a sudden like your Breath of Fire is down too long, and then like you're sitting on an extra your charge of Keg Smash, and it's just like it kind of like delays the rotation where things just like get out of sync, and then your rotation feels very clunky, and it's not a fun play style. But it's how you optimize. So I think we need to see some changes. I think like maybe if you don't play Rushing Jade Wind, that might help a little bit. But for the most part, I'm not a huge fan of the way that Monk is feeling right now. There's also obviously a little bit of a design rework, because this is one of the tanks that isn't getting their tier set reintroduced into their talent tree. Unlike Prot Warrior, Blood DK, and so we're no longer having like Keg Smash being a good chunk of our healing. We're not getting that increased health, so we're kind of like starting to rely on these other talent choices, which seem very good, but it's hard to test them in normal level content. So I'll have to talk about more about the Monk in a bit. And when I say a bit, I mean like in a future video, once we have maybe some reworks or maybe at end game content where I can actually start to test this stuff. Last but not least, we have Warrior. So this is probably the footage you've been watching for most of this. Is the Warrior feels actually really good. The talent choices are great. You have like a lot of options for like single target damage, for AoE damage. You get a ton of access to toolkit options, like things like Intervene or Intimidating Shouts. You can actually stance swap now, or stance is what sometimes people call it. Which is where like you can actually now play defensive stance, berserker stance, or battle stance, and kind of swap in between them depending on what you need. If you need to be a little bit tankier and you're going to sacrifice damage, you go defensive stance. If you want to go like for just increased auto attacks, you can go berserk. If you want to maybe get increased crit, you can go into battle stance. It's very cool, very engaging. They're of course bringing back the tier set, but they're also bringing things like Ren spreading by applying Ren and Thunderclapping, and that's really fun in dungeons because you're able to get a ton of bleeds up. They're also giving warriors like rage generation based on bleed ticks, so you not only have your deep wounds, but now you have Rend being applied, which is just phenomenal. And then you still have the crazy good like avatar Last Stand, extra rage generation, you have shield wall, you have anger management. You just get access to a ton of really cool powers and talent choices that Warriors have been kind of needing for a while, and this talent tree rework has definitely been in their favor compared to something maybe like the Monk or the Druid, where the talent changes actually kind of make them either clunky or just like poorly designed, or nothing too exciting in cases of the Druid. So I am most excited for Warrior. Again, I'm level 62 only, but I just started kind of playing it today, actually before recording this video, and so far it's been really fun. So those are actually pretty much my thoughts so far on the beta. If you guys want to see me play beta live on stream, feel free to check me out in the description below. We also have a Discord server as well, where you can come in and feel free to ask me questions and stuff like that, and just engage in, you know, a community about people who enjoy tanking and things like Mythic Plus. So, and last but not least, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons who support my channel, and I can't thank you guys enough. It allows me to actually do what I love. So again, thank you. All right, I hope you guys are all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.